Welcome to the world of science fiction Neon's Alien. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss a new story from Neon's Alien universe. The sky above Drethar 9 was always red, not because of danger but because of warning. Everyone knew what it meant. Stay away from the Red Forest. No scout returned from it. No Vulri warrior survived more than a few hours inside. Yet today, a team of elite Vulri soldiers stood at the edge of that cursed land, and with them was a human. His name was Jack Carter. He wore no armor, no helmet, just a smile and a leather jacket. In his hand was a long stick, and a bag of dried snacks he kept munching on. Commander Sarah Vale, the Vulri team leader, stared at him from under her battle visor. "You do understand," she said slowly. "What lives inside this forest eats creatures like us in seconds." Jack looked up at the towering blood-red trees. "I hope it's got seasoning." The other Vulri warriors growled softly. Some snorted. A few looked away in disgust. To them, this mission was sacred. To the human, it seemed like a picnic. The Red Forest was not just dangerous, it was alive. The trees hissed, the wind screamed. Shadows moved even when there was no sun. It was said that the apex predator hunted everything inside. No one had ever seen it fully, just claws, teeth, and remains. As the team stepped into the thick red brush, the air grew heavier. The temperature dropped, and the silence was unnatural. Not even bugs dared to make noise here. Still, Jack walked like he was on a weekend hike. He hummed a tune, picked a strange glowing fruit off a tree, and bit it. One of the soldiers gasped. "That's poisonous," Jack chewed thoughtfully. "Tastes like rotten peach. I've had worse on Earth Airlines." Sarah pulled him aside. "Are all humans this reckless?" she asked. Jack shrugged. "No. Some are worse. I'm the careful kind." They moved deeper. Each step echoed. Each shadow seemed to breathe. A broken skull lay near the roots of a twisted tree. Sarah knelt beside it. "Vulri markings," she whispered. "This one was part of the last expedition." Jack looked at the skull and nodded. "Judging by the jawline, I'd say they were stressed when they died." Suddenly, a sharp howl echoed through the trees. It was deep, hungry, wrong. The Vulri formed a circle, weapons raised, eyes up. Sarah barked. "That's the apex," but Jack just stared into the woods, still chewing. Then, silence, followed by heavy footsteps. Thump, thump, thump. From between the trees came a creature the size of a tank, muscles like stone, eyes glowing, gold jaws dripping black saliva, the apex predator. The Vulri backed up, one whispered, "We're dead." Jack stepped forward. "You guys don't eat these?" The creature growled, sharp and low. It charged, and the Vulri scattered, all except Jack. He sidestepped, grabbed a branch, jammed it into the apex's open mouth, then leapt onto its back. Sarah turned in shock. "What is he doing?" Jack held on tight, punching behind the creature's ear. The apex roared, bucked, but Jack stayed on. Then he pulled a sharp metal skewer from his boot. With one clean move, he jammed it into the beast's neck. The apex shuddered, stumbled, and collapsed, dead. The forest went quiet again. Jack stood up on the fallen creature's back, covered in dirt, a little blood on his jacket. He wiped his hands, turned to the Vulri. "Dinner's ready." The warriors just stared, mouths open, eyes wide. Sarah stepped forward slowly. You killed it." "With a stick." Jack nodded. "Skewer. But yeah," she pointed at the massive beast. "That was an apex. You treated it like a roasted bird." He shrugged. "Back on Earth, we call these things barbecue opportunities." As the sun dipped lower, the Vulri made camp around the apex's corpse. Some still refused to believe what they saw. Others whispered about Jack under their breath. Sarah sat across from him, watching him clean the skewer. "You came into our death zone and turned it into a kitchen," she said. Jack grinned. "You haven't seen anything yet." And from somewhere deep in the woods, another set of eyes opened, watching, waiting. Bigger, stronger, smarter, because the real apex was still out there, and it had just smelled something new, a predator that walks on two legs and doesn't run. Night came fast in the red forest. The blood-colored trees blocked the moons above. No stars, no light, just shadows and silence that felt alive. The Vulri warriors sat around a flickering plasma torch. They didn't speak much. They watched the trees. Every branch, every root, even the wind seemed to carry whispers. Jack Carter sat by the fire, casually sharpening a metal skewer on a rock. His sleeves were rolled up. He had taken some meat from the apex he killed and cooked it over open flame. Daik. Smell drifted through the air, rich, smoky, inviting. Commander Sarah Vielle stared at the sizzling meat. You know that smell will draw in every predator within 20 miles. Jack smirked. I know. She narrowed her eyes. You want that? I'm just hungry, he said. If something bigger shows up, I'll feed it too. The Vulri didn't laugh. They were too tense, too aware. They'd scanned the body Jack killed earlier. It was strong, but not the apex. It was just a juvenile. A cub. The real one was still out there. The trees rustled. Not from wind, but from weight. Something heavy moved in the dark. Something careful. Jack stood and sniffed the air, then smiled. Showtime. Suddenly a roar. Not like before, this one was deeper, older, meaner. The Vulri grabbed their rifles, formed a tight ring. Sarah hissed, "Shields up!" Jack didn't move. He tossed the meat onto a stone plate and set it on the ground. Hope it's hungry. The forest exploded. Branches snapped. The fire dimmed. And out of the dark came the true apex, taller than a dropship, shoulders wide as a tank. Its eyes glowed yellow like dying suns. Its breath melted leaves. Its teeth were long, black, and wet. It stopped at the edge of the camp, looked at the Vulri, then at Jack, then at the meat. It stepped forward. Sarah raised her rifle. Don't, Jack said quickly. He held up one hand. Let it come. The apex walked to the meat, sniffed it, and snarled, then snapped it in its jaws, swallowed whole, then turned to Jack. Sarah shouted, "Move!" The warriors opened fire. Plasma bolts lit up the trees, but the apex moved like a shadow, fast, silent, straight for Jack. Jack didn't run. He stepped aside, let the beast charge past. It skidded, turned and lunged again. This time he was ready. Jack threw a flash bomb into the air. The sky lit white. The apex roared and covered its eyes. Jack ran up its back, fast. He jammed a heated skewer under its shoulder. The beast screamed, but didn't fall. It bucked, twisted. Jack held on. Then he pulled out a tiny grenade, slammed it between two spine plates, jumped. Boom. The apex roared in pain, staggered, but it wasn't dead. Sarah couldn't believe her eyes. He's fighting it, alone. One warrior whispered, "What is he?" Another said, "Not prey." The apex charged again. Jack ran into the trees, leading it, drawing it away, disappearing into the red mist. For 5 minutes. Nothing. Only distant howls, crashes, roars, then silence. The Vulri stood frozen, weapons shaking, eyes wide, until footsteps returned, heavy, but steady. Out of the trees came Jack, dragging the apex's jaw, covered in blood. Dirt, smoke, still chewing. Come, he dropped the jaw at Sarah's feet. Told you it smelled good. She looked at the jaw, then at him, then at her team. He fought it like it was dinner. He's not a warrior, one said. No, she replied. He's something older. That night no one slept, not because of fear, but because their entire understanding of strength had changed, and far beyond the forest word began to spread, not from soldiers, not from reports, but from whispers. The human ate the apex. He didn't fear it. He fed it. The forest was quiet. The fire had burned low, but none of the Vulri warriors slept. They just sat and stared at Jack Carter. He sat calmly beside the apex's burned skull, using a stick to roast a piece of its meat like it was any normal animal. Commander, Sarah Vael had watched many creatures die in battle, but never like this. Never this calm. She finally stepped forward. The others watched as she crouched across from him. Her voice was low, careful. "Why aren't you afraid?" Jack glanced up, then back at the fire. "I am." He chewed the meat. "I just don't let it drive." "The bus." Sarah tilted her head, confused. "I don't understand." Jack smiled slightly. "You will." She sat down across from him, removing her helmet. Her glowing eyes scanned his face. "You walked into a predator's mouth. You ran toward it, you climbed it." She paused. "We Vulri trained from childhood to kill monsters like that, and most of us fail. But you treated it like it was normal." Jack tossed the stick into the fire. "Because where I'm from, it is." Sarah blinked. "What do you mean?" Jack leaned forward. His voice was quiet, but heavy. "Earth is beautiful, but it's also cruel. We learned to walk while surrounded by wolves. We climbed trees with snakes, crossed rivers with alligators." He looked her in the eye. "And we didn't have claws, or fangs, or scales. We just had willpower and fire." Sarah stared at him. "You evolved, surrounded by death?" Jack nodded. "We didn't just survive, we learned from it." He pulled a small hollow device from his pocket, tapped it. Images flickered into the air. Ancient earth predators, lions, bears, sharks, then humans, fire, spears, cities, rockets. "We didn't climb to the top because we were strongest. We climbed it because we're the only ones crazy enough to face monsters. And keep walking." Sarah didn't speak for a long time. Then, "That apex would have torn any of us apart." Jack shrugged. "It almost got me too." She looked up sharply. "You were scared?" He smiled. "Of course. I just didn't let it see that." He leaned back, hands behind his head. "We joke when we're scared. We eat when we're nervous. We smile when we want to run." He looked at the stars above the red trees. "Fear is like hunger. You feel it, but it doesn't mean you stop moving." Sarah stood slowly. She turned back to her soldiers. They were watching closely, like cubs watching fire for the first time. She spoke loud enough for them to hear. "The apex was never our enemy. Our enemy was thinking we could never beat it." That night, the Vulri didn't train. They didn't guard. They sat beside the human and listened to stories of storms and deserts, of wild jungles, of cities that never slept, of humans who smiled while the world tried to break them, and the next morning, the next. The Vulri didn't fear the forest. They feared going back to who they were before they met the human, because now they understood. Jack Carter wasn't brave because he was strong. He was brave because Earth had taught him. Fear means go forward, anyway. The sun never rose in the red forest. It only glowed, dim and red, through a sky that always looked like bleeding smoke. But the Vulri felt something had changed. It wasn't the trees, or the air. It was them. They walked differently now. Not like prey, but like they were following someone who had already survived the worst. Jack Carter led the way. He moved without fear, but his eyes missed nothing. He paused by claw marks on trees, sniffed soil and tossed pebbles into shadows before stepping forward. Commander Sarah Vael had begun copying his habits. Silently, without realizing. Suddenly, Jack raised a hand. Everyone froze. He crouched low and touched the ground. Still warm. Sticky. Fresh. "Kill," he muttered. Ahead lay the shredded remains of a smaller predator. Its spine was cracked, its ribs peeled back like fruit. Jack stood slowly and whispered, "Something's following us." The Vulri readied their weapons. But Jack didn't pull a gun, he just smiled. Let's set the table. That night they didn't sleep. They dug pits, tied cables between trees, smeared blood on rocks. Jack built fire traps using chemicals from his travel pack, all while chewing on dried meat like it was just another campfire. Sarah watched him work. You've done this before. Not with aliens, Jack said. But back home, we've got bears the size of cars and lizards that steal babies. I used to camp in the wild with nothing but string and a lighter. Then the forest fell silent again. Too silent. The air thickened. Even the trees seemed to lean away. A howl, low and long, rippled across the ground. The Vulri gripped their weapons. But Jack didn't reach for anything, he just nodded. It's here. A shadow moved between the trees. Then another. Then a massive shape emerged from the mist. The second apex. Twice the size of the last, older, smarter. Eyes glowing like fire through fog. It didn't charge. It watched, studied them, sniffed the air. Its intelligence was terrifying. This wasn't a beast. This was a hunter. Then it stepped forward, silently, right into the trap zone. Jack tapped a small device on his wrist. Click. A sudden flare of blue fire shot from the ground. The beast shrieked and leapt back but caught one of the cable traps. It snapped to the side, smashing into a tree. The Vulri opened fire, but Jack raised a hand. No. Let it learn. The apex roared, twisting in pain. It tried to run, but Jack dropped a second device. The fire behind it exploded, trapping it in a ring of burning roots. Jack walked forward slowly. No armor, no gun, just eyes full of something ancient. The apex snarled, but didn't charge. For the first time, it hesitated. You thought we were prey, Jack said quietly. You followed us. He stopped 10 feet from the massive creature. But now, you know. He knelt, picked up a small bone from its last kill, tossed it at its feet. You're not the only hunter. The apex growled but backed away. Step by step, it didn't turn its back. It respected him now, maybe even feared him. And then, it disappeared into the trees. Gone, alive, but changed. The Vulri stepped out slowly, in awe. One whispered, "Why didn't you kill it?" Jack dusted his hands. Because this one's smart. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let the enemy walk away remembering you. Sarah looked at him like he was something not from Earth, but from legend. You didn't defeat it with violence. Jack smiled. No. I defeated it with fear. And far in the Red Forest, the apex didn't hunt again for days. Because even the most dangerous predator now knew one truth. Somewhere out there was a soft-skinned creature that could cook, joke, and still be the scariest thing in the woods. The Vulri homeworld of Zarthun had not seen a human in over a century, and none had ever been invited willingly, until now. When Jack Carter stepped out of the shuttle, every Vulri eye turned to him, some with hate, some with fear, but many with curiosity. News had already spread. He ate the apex. He scared the forest back into silence. He didn't kill for pride, he killed because he was hungry. Commander Sarah Vielle walked beside him through the great halls of stone and flame. This was the High Citadel, and inside, the council of elders waited. They had summoned Jack for one purpose: the trial of claws. It was their most sacred tradition, a test of strength, speed, and mind, meant only for Vulri warriors who wished to earn their mark as champions. No outsider had ever attempted it, because no outsider had ever lived long enough. Jack stood before the council. 12 ancient Vulri stared down at him from curved thrones made of predator bone. One spoke. His voice rumbled like old earth. You defy our rules, human. You treat our enemies as meals. You bring fear not with armies, but with laughter. Another leaned forward. Do you think we fear you? Jack looked up at them, calm. No, but I think you're starting to understand me. The room stirred. Then the High Elder raised a clawed hand. You will face the trial of claws, alone. No weapons, no aid. Survive till morning, or leave this world forgotten. Sarah stepped forward. This isn't necessary, but Jack held up a hand. I accept. They took him through tunnels, deep below the citadel, past statues of fallen champions, past cages lined with slash marks and bones, to a massive gate sealed with glowing runes. A Vulri guard looked at Jack. You've got no armor, no claws, not even fur. Jack shrugged. I've got a lighter. The gate opened, darkness breathed out like smoke, and Jack stepped inside. The trial had begun. The pit was a wide, rocky cave filled with broken terrain and hidden beasts, traps, blades, heat vents, and worst of all, a creature bred for this trial. The Vorkash, half lizard, half cat, fast, silent, deadly. Even most Vulri failed to last an hour. But 3 hours passed, then 5. The watchers above said nothing, only stared at the monitors as Jack moved like a shadow. He didn't fight head-on, set traps. He used bones to fake footsteps. He used reflections to trick sensors. Then he baited the Vorkash with its own growl, mimicked back through a broken comm speaker. The beast charged, and fell into a spiked pit he'd covered with thermal cloth. At sunrise, the horn sounded, the gate opened, smoke drifted out, and from that smoke, walked Jack, dragging a cooked Vorkash leg over his shoulder. He took a bite, chewed. Tastes like chicken, the elders stared. Some stood in silence. One dropped his ceremonial staff. Another whispered. He completed the trial, and made lunch out of it. Sarah ran to him, eyes wide. You survived. Jack smiled. I did better than that. He held up a claw from the Vorkash. I won. That day the Vulri changed a tradition. From then on, the trial of claws would have a new symbol beside it. A fire mark burned into the wall. A small earth flame. Jack Carter's mark. Not just a warrior, not just a hunter, but the first alien ever honored in the Hall of Predators. And in the streets of Zarthun, young Vulri whispered a new saying. When fear comes, eat first, ask later. The trial of claws was over, but the questions weren't. In the shining white towers of Zarthun's Science Guild, Jack Carter lay on a metal table, shirt off, arms folded behind his head. He looked more like someone relaxing at the beach than a man being examined by alien doctors. 3 Vulri scientists hovered around him. They scanned his bones, his muscles, his brain. They ran blood tests, eye scans, even measured the chemical makeup of his sweat. And still, nothing. High Physician Vareth frowned at the display. This can't be right, he muttered. No claws, no venom, no armor beneath the skin. Another scientist, Julan, blinked twice. He has no upgrades, no nanotech, not even hormone boosters. The third, an older medic, leaned closer. What keeps him alive? Jack opened one eye. Coffee helps. They didn't laugh. They were too confused. Commander Sarah Vielle watched from behind the glass wall. She had seen him kill the Apex. She had seen him outsmart the Vorkash. And yet now she stared at a scan showing normal human biology. No advanced healing. No energy shielding in the blood. Just bones, tissue, and a heart beating slow and steady. How is this possible? Vareth whispered. He should be dead 10 times over. Jack sat up on the table. Can I put my shirt back on, or are you still measuring my chest hair? Vareth finally asked him. What are you made of? Jack swung his legs over the edge, then looked them in the eyes. Pain, dirt, cold nights, lost wars, found friends. He stood up, grabbed his jacket. I'm made of the same stuff that made my great-grandfather crawl out of a trench with one arm and still fight. They watched, stunned, as he walked toward the exit. Sarah stopped him at the door. You're not enhanced, she said quietly. He smiled. Nope, just human. That's what makes it fun. Outside the lab, whispers were already spreading. He has no upgrades. He survived the trial with meat and fire. Is this what all humans are like? But the truth was more terrifying, because if Jack Carter was just average on Earth, then the galaxy had no idea what humanity could really do. Later that night, the scientists gathered privately. Julan leaned forward and said what they were all thinking. He is dangerous, not because of power, but because he believes he's nothing special. And deep in a vault beneath the Science Guild, the recordings of his trial were sealed, labeled with 3 words: observe, never engage. But it was already too late. Across colonies and outposts, soldiers began training like Jack, eating like him, smiling in danger like him. And Sarah? She didn't fear him. She followed him, because she had finally seen what humans were really made of. Not steel, not fire, but something harder to kill, Will. The Vulri city of Zarthun woke to trembling stone. The ground shook. Dust rained from rooftops, and a deep echoing roar thundered across the mountains. The Apex Mother had come, twice the size of the one Jack had faced in the forest. Older than any living Vulri. It had tracked him through the wildlands, across fire rivers and bone canyons. It had smelled his scent, the scent of fire, of blood, of challenge, and it wanted him. Panic spread fast. Civilians ran to shelters, warriors readied plasma cannons, but the Apex was too big, too fast. Nothing slowed it down. Inside the command center, Vulri generals argued. Launch airstrikes. Evacuate. The inner city. We must call for galactic aid. Then, a calm voice spoke. I'll handle it. All heads turned. Jack Carter stood at the doorway, arms crossed, chewing something crunchy. Sarah narrowed her eyes. Is that Apex jerky? Jack nodded. Breakfast. Sarah stepped toward him. You can't fight that thing alone. Jack raised an eyebrow. Why not? I'm not finished eating yet. The generals stared. Do you have a plan? He nodded. Feed it, trick it, burn it. The usual. Jack walked alone to the city's edge, carrying nothing but a backpack, a bottle of sauce, and a detonator. He found the Apex Mother standing like a nightmare. Its jaws were wider than houses. Its breath melted metal. Its roar cracked windows. But Jack didn't flinch. He unpacked his grill, lit it, and threw a massive slab of cooked Vorkash meat onto the flame. The smell hit the air like a weapon. The Apex paused, sniffed, snorted, then stepped closer. Jack opened his arms. Come on, Big. Mama, let's see if you've got taste. As the beast lunged, he rolled beneath its legs, dropped fire gel onto its underbelly, and ignited the trap he had set in the sewer lines below. A massive explosion lit up the sky. Smoke, flames, screams, and silence. When the dust cleared, the Apex Mother was gone. A massive crater remained. At the center of it stood Jack, covered in soot, hair slightly singed, and holding a smoking meat skewer. Not bad. The city didn't cheer right away. They just stared. Then one Vulri child shouted, He cooked the Apex. Another, He made a crater with hot sauce. Then came the roar. Not of monsters, but of respect. Later, in the Hall of Echoes, the Vulri elders gathered around Jack. Sarah stood beside him. The High Elder stepped forward. You came to our world as a stranger. You walked through death like it was dinner. You didn't kill for sport. You didn't fight for pride. You did it all because you were hungry and stubborn. He raised a ceremonial claw and touched Jack's shoulder. You are no longer an outsider. From this day forward, you are Vulraktal, the flame that eats fear. The hall erupted in howls of honor. Sarah smiled and handed Jack a carved bone pendant. This marks you as one of us. Jack looked at it, then grinned. Do I get a free meal with this? They laughed. But deep inside, they knew this was history, because fear had walked into their world and been eaten alive by a human with no armor, no claws, and no mercy. Until the decades to come, Vulri younglings would gather around fires and whisper, He didn't run, he didn't scream, he just smiled and asked if it was edible. Jack Carter never called himself a warrior. He never carried a title. But to the Vulri, he became a legend, the human who tasted death and called it delicious.